On the show today, we have Kishshana Palmer, and here is why she is awesome. She's a keynote speaker, author, executive coach, and an organizational change expert. She is the founder of Management, delivering custom coaching, consulting, and training for leaders and teams ready to grow with clarity and care. And she's got herself a book out that I really think you need to check out. It's called Busy is a Four-Letter Word, a guide to achieving more by doing less. Hello, Kishshana.
Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let me tell you who's not busy, who's not listening about not being busy. My two staffies, okay? These two 9-month-olds are like, oh, yeah, we were sleeping for the last 2 hours, but right now, it's time to party.
That time of the day, they look at the clock and they're like, okay, now is a thing. Now is when we're going to get busy. Totally get that.
Yeah, that's it.
I'm super curious to talk about this in the sense that I talk often about being busy and how if being too busy is probably I think, one of the busiest barriers to leadership, to actually being a good leader is I'm too busy. Then you're too busy to be a leader if you're too busy. So I want to pick your brain. So curious about how we should be attacking this better. But before we get into any of that, I have the question I like to kick off all of my chats with, which is, Kishshana, what is your best or worst employee experience?
Okay, so I'm going to do worse so that we can just build up.
I like it.
We can have a crescendo for the rest of our time. So I was on an executive team, and I'm one of those professionals that actually have been in the C-suite pretty a long time, probably since my early 20s. And I think at that time, listen, I'm still in my early 20s, okay? But 20 years ago. And I had a CEO who would introduce each member of the executive team. That CEO knew their bios, they knew where they were from, they'd break down their schools. And then that CEO would turn to me and go, okay, Kishshana, go ahead, introduce yourself. Now, if that had happened like a week after I started, sure. But the CFO and I started 6 or 7 months prior on the same day. So why was I getting the introduce yourself wave off and everybody else was getting this like Oscar introduction? And the reason I call that one of the worst is because it was emblematic of what was happening to me and to others like me within the organization, where you are like in a room, but you're pretty much invisible. You are thinking that you're on Gilligan's Island with the others, but you actually are still maybe on the boat looking at the island, right? And I decided that I was going to talk with the CEO about it because I ran one office and that CEO ran the other office. So this is supposed to be my counterpart, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, let's come up with a safe word because, that's some things that, you might do some things that, the way you show up in the world, maybe you don't recognize that that's not okay. And I'm not going to put my CEO on Front Street. So let's have our little code word, little safe word. CEO said, yes, that sounds great because I loved it. Okay. I was unaware of my blind spot. So I thought that was a win, right? It's the best. Russell, the worst. Here's what happened. We went on break a week later. We're on break for 3 weeks. We come back from break. Nothing has happened except for break. All of a sudden, I have a performance problem. All of a sudden, my staff feels like I'm not listening to them. They didn't tell me that. That's what they heard. All of a sudden, my work is in question. All of a sudden, I'm not performing. And I believed that I serve the pleasure of the CEO when you're on the C-suite. I'm like, look, if the CEO is not pleased and my job is to run a team, raise money, run policy, this and that, like I can't be here for that. And so I was like, what are we going to do? And so I ended up negotiating a package out because I went from being this like stellar new team member who had done this like magnanimous amount of things in 7 months to performance. And what made it the worst for me at that time is because it's in a leadership role, right? And so it's not something, I don't have other peers I can really talk with this about except on that C-suite. And they do not have the same experience I'm having. Thing one. Thing two, now they're frozen in place because they're like, what if this happens to me? So now instead of folks coming to like rally, like this cannot stand, they're like, I will say no. So you're even further out by yourself. And I was a young solo mom, with a mortgage and a kid to feed, right? And so, whereas now looking back, I was like, I should have sued the hell out of these people.
Mm.
At the time, I didn't because I was like, "What? I got to feed the kid." So I got a great package and I left. The reason I say it's the worst is because it left such a mark on me that I did not go back into full time work for anybody else again. And I was like, I'm gonna charge my own back. Russell, there you have it.
It's it becomes a reoccurring theme in my conversations is that, and you sort of mentioned this, and I don't want to throw you under the bus a little bit, but you
No,
talked
you're
about
fine.
leadership roles. But I'm like, but you just demonstrated somebody that had no leadership skills in a leadership role and shouldn't be in that position. But we assume because they're have the letters after their name or the title that they've done the work, that they're a better human being, that they are a
Absolutely.
leader. And yet, just because executive does not equal leadership.
It
And
does
yet,
not.
but we default to assume it is, and it becomes this reoccurring problem because they're losing great staff because of that behavior.
Because
So what did you
100%.
take with you? I mean, if you're like, I'm out, I'm not reporting to anybody ever again. What did you take with you? Is it pretty much, was it, and not to sound horrible, was it sort of like, I'm getting jaded now. I'm off you executive types because of this one experience.
So jaded. What? It took me a minute. I was salty. You hear me? Okay. The chip that was on my shoulder was so big, I probably could have launched a new tech firm. Like that's how big that chip was. You hear me? I had to really do some introspective work because when you essentially are quit fired, right? And you can't talk about it and you can't like articulate it. I'm a writer. I couldn't write about it.
Yeah.
What it ends up doing, you end up turning inward on yourself. And so then you start thinking, okay, well, maybe something is wrong with me. Like maybe there was a reason why that person didn't come to my defense or didn't advocate for me or fill in the blank. Maybe I'm the problem. And so when I launched my practice, I stayed as far away from those types of things as possible. And I did this thing where oftentimes I think leaders and folks who are in positions of leadership do is that I started to lean into my skills area. And for me, skills are things that you learn to do that you get paid for. And we often hire for skills where I think now what we really need to be looking at are talents, things that come easiest to me. And then I can decide if I want to monetize them. And if you're in rare air, you're gifting, and those are things you're born with, and you can decide to monetize them or not. And most of us never either hire for those things, nor do we actually get to live fully in those things. And so the shift for me was like, wait a minute, everybody who works for me moves up into leadership roles,
Mm.
has stayed in the sector, stays in the business, invites me to their weddings and asks for a resume and references 10 years later.
Right.
I might be doing something right. What did I do even though I didn't persist? And so that is what caused me to like have a real shift in the way I look at what are sort of like the components of being a healthy, a dialed in leader, because I realized I was too busy focused out
Mm.
on what you didn't do, as opposed to like, what am I actually bringing to bear? Where are my blind spots? What are some things I need to understand being a leader who works with and for other leaders? And so I started to ask different questions as opposed to try to answer the questions that there was no answer.
Wouldn't that be amazing to have a performance review? They're like, how many weddings did you get invited to this year? Like, just sort of like,
Listen, I just want folks to know that is a litmus test. And I remember
it
during the
is.
pandemic, I said it on the other side of it. And I was like, look, I said, if during the pandemic, when everybody was doing Zoom baby reveals and weddings, if you didn't get invited to your team's fill in the blank life event, they don't like you.
Yeah.
Okay. You
Yeah.
are not it. And the number of folks who would like send me notes like, I think I'm that person. Do you do coaching? I don't think I'm likable. You're probably not.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I just think like that is actually a thing. To me, that is a KPI worth measuring.
Oh, it absolutely is. It's the humanity piece because we focus, and
Correct.
again, back to the confusion of executive equals leader, which is not the case, but
Yep.
deliverables, delivery, profit, equals leadership. Again, not the same thing.
Not
But
the same.
so that leads me to my first question because I love definitions. I hate confusion because
Right.
clarity is key in the organization, and we're not great at it, as we've kind of illustrated around leadership around, what success looks like. So we're going to talk about being busy.
Yeah.
And this may seem obvious to anybody asking, but I'm kind of curious as to how you define being busy when it comes to the workplace.
I think being busy as it relates to the workplace
Mm.
is when you are so focused on other people's stuff that you do not take the time to slow down to really focus on the stuff that you need to do to move the needle. And so that can look like if you're in finance, that can look like you're so focused on the expenses and making sure that AP and AR are on the books properly that you don't take the time to actually get your game up in terms of making sure you're upskilling so that you are staying in your talent flow, that you are not learning what's new and different about how technology is moving, finance and how fintech is moving along, that you're not investing in making sure that users in the organization understand the why, or that people don't treat you and or your team like FedEx Kinko. They're just going to drop off the copies at 9 and pick them up at 5. Where is the check? Where is the deposit? Where is the ACH? Can you start the wire? Right? Like you don't get an opportunity to actually build and sustain healthy relationships at work when you are busy.
So what I'm hearing is it's more not what you're doing, which everybody equates to busy being what I'm doing, all the things I'm doing. I'm not enough time in the day. But from
Exactly.
what I'm hearing from your definition is it's all the things you're not doing. The
All the
busyness
things
is
you're not.
about putting the roadblocks, self-inflicted or not, to
That's right.
stop you from being an actual leader person in the workplace.
Exactly right. So I'll give it to an example. So somebody on a C-suite who is running a vertical, right? So you're running the people vertical, you're running ops, you're running IT, policy, you're running strategy. Um, if you do not take intentional time each month to slow your brain down to do some strategy and thinking, right? What's the road ahead? What's happening out in the news in our industry? What's some forward thinking things? Am I connecting with other peers? Do I have my finger on the pulse? Have I gone and talked to young people who are coming into this space that are seeing? You see what I'm saying? Like, am
Mhm.
I keeping myself fresh from a strategic perspective? If you're not taking the time to do that, then actually you are going to be a tactician when you really should be deploying your team members to do the tactics. You can't set strategy if you are too far in the weeds.
If it's more about being reactive than being proactive. Is
Exactly.
so you've titled the name of your book. Busy is a four-letter word. Why did you feel the need to be that bold about it and also to kind of, I guess, reframe it for people?
Yeah. Because people are like, oh my gosh, you're so busy. Oh, Kishshana, you're so busy. Oh, Kishshana, you're so busy. And let me tell you what was happening to me. People stopped inviting me to stuff.
Mhm.
But they asked me, and then I said I was busy. They would say, "Oh, I just figured you were busy. Oh, you're doing so many things. You're just so busy. Oh, I know you're so busy. You probably don't decide for me what my priorities are." And then I realized, oh, I'm giving people mixed messages in my mind. I'm a multi hyphenate who has learned to move in across different modalities of delivery. But everything I do in my mind is about impact so that people can see different ways they can live well so that they can lead well. But that wasn't, I was transmitted out. That wasn't what was getting transmitted in. Okay. Don't mind me, Russell. I'm watching this thing called Invasion on Apple TV right now. And so I'm here with the transmissions right now. Forget it. So for me, I realized like, oh, people see me a way that I'm not experiencing for myself. One. And two, internally, I'm exhausted and I don't seem to ever finish anything. So like imagine this conflict. People see you as a super high performer who's so busy you can't come to the fill in the blank. They see you as excellent and delivering on and a reach. Oh, I wish I could be like. So now I'm out of reach. Where on the inside, I'm like everybody else. And I'm struggling. And guess what else I am? Trapped.
Mhm.
Because now people believe me to be a way. And now I can't talk about the humanity of what's actually happening to me. So I said, if that's happening to me, that has to be happening to other people. So let me figure out how to get myself out of this thing.
it seems to be so tied to identity because we work in the workplace and we're like, I'm busy, you're busy, and we use it as an excuse. Or it
Yep.
seems to roll off our tongue. But everybody's busy to some degree. Even if you don't have a meeting right this second, to your point earlier, if you're doing it right, you're strategic, you're thinking about the next thing, the bigger project, how to
Yes.
calibrate. So what are we getting wrong here? Because it feels like we're still celebrating productivity, we're still
Absolutely.
celebrating delivery, and we seem to be missing this whole piece.
I think the word that you used a little while ago, clarity, is the like the linchpin.
Mm.
We are not clear as leaders on what big S strategy really means. We are not clear before you even get to strategy, because to me, strategy is your North Star. We're not clear on the vision
Mm.
that the strategy is driving toward.
Even if there is a vision.
Even if they're it's like, like when like people talking like half sentences, and I have a friend like that who she'll get like 2/3 of the way in her sentence and then switch sentences and go 2/3 again and switch. Like she never finishes the sentence. But it's like this interesting language I've known for a long time that I can follow now. But can you imagine if you're sitting in a team meeting and your leader is just giving you word soup and you're supposed to go, I'm smart. I'm learning. So you pretend like you know what they're talking about, but
Mhm.
you have no damn idea. They don't know neither. So I think a lot of leaders actually, again, back to the don't slow down to get out of the tactics to make sure you actually can set vision, which means you have to get out of your environment, right? So that you can have some headspace to go, what does this look like? And what would need to be true? And who do I need to have alongside me in order to make sure this is true? To then be able to have the people, the who's, to help you with really refining what that strategy should be, and then having leaders who understand how to deploy little s strategy so that they can get the stuff done.
You got my brain bouncing around from three levels here because I see from a busyness perspective, it's how we perceive busyness and the
Yeah.
impacts to us, surrounding ourselves, our team, and then the culture, which might have a very different idea of what busy or not busy looks like. So, starting with ourselves,
Yeah.
what is the cost to ourselves of being busy? Because I mean, you've already illustrated you may be losing opportunity because other people are misconceiving your situation, or they
Yes.
are, and they're just not, they're not delving in to have those connections and conversations with you. So I'm just thinking it from a mental health and well-being standpoint.
Yeah. I think a lot of us, and I will speak for folks, so I'm a Gen Xer, came into the workplace under boomers, right? Where you show up early, you leave late, you don't complain, you figure it out. And then if you're parenting, then if you were a latchkey kid of the 80s, or you were a young person in the early 90s, right? Like you were find a way to make a way, figure it out. Doesn't matter what your socioeconomic background was. You on your own. Okay. Then we have these babies, and what are we doing? Helicopter in here on the heliopad for everything. So we create this environment where we are fostering an air of like mediocrity to the people who we're supporting. And I put that in quotation marks. I would actually say helping. And then I'll go one step further to say that are we actually helping them? So what happens is that we end up having dis-ease in our own bodies. So our mental health takes a hit because depending on what generation you are listening to this, you might have been taught not to complain. Look it out. Figure it out. If you came into the workplace and you got tossed into the deep end and that was your onboarding, it is really hard to let go of that way of being. And everywhere you go, there you are. So if you got tossed into the deep end as a kid, and then you got tossed in the deep end when you went on your academic journey or your vocational journey, and then you got tossed into the deep end when you started your career, let me tell you what you're doing. You're still swimming in the deep end right now. It doesn't matter if your heart's failing. It doesn't matter if you're at risk for stroke. You like, I'll get to the doctor next week. I'll do this next week. I don't have time for that. And you are modeling that it is okay to not take care of yourself.
So are we needing to reframe here? Because you talk about I'm a Gen Xer too, and it was all about complaining. You get it, you mask, you
And Chris,
like I come from the service industry where you scream and shout in the back and you
it's
put on the
back.
facade the minute you come out onto the floor,
Better
right?
believe it.
And the workplace is, I don't care what corporate this, that, and the other, is the same thing.
That's
So
right.
is it a reframing exercise? Because I'm thinking if we don't call it complaining, if we call it constructive feedback, if we call it like, how can we better improve the organization by not calling it complaining? What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing this as almost a communication exercise
Yeah.
in some way.
So for me, that's one of the things in terms of rethinking stuff. You have to like reset your baseline. And so that's why having vision is really important.
Mhm.
That's why naming, if you don't have it, and we're in a position, or we're in a point of inflection, right? That's why being able to say, like, what are our actual assets? Our human assets in terms of like, what do we have on team? Where are we strong? What are our digital assets? What are our physical assets? Like, what are some of the policies, procedures, and practices that we have? Can we look at those things from a position of strength so that we can level set and name what is ground zero? A lot of times when I work with leaders and they are really struggling, particularly with intergenerational teams, it's because younger professionals coming into the workplace, they're like, why? 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 Can you give me a reason why? And they're like, further, actually, don't give me a reason why. Let me tell you my why. Let me tell y'all, we raised those young people. Hello? They're doing it to us at the house too. Okay, just to be clear. And so our frustration isn't that we're not naming the why because we still have more of a command and control type of leadership. Do it because I said so, right? I don't have to have a reason. I don't have to have clarity. I don't have to read you in, right? You can be over your skis, you on your own.
Mhm.
So, in order for us to reset this so that there is a place to move from this idea of complaining to naming, is so that your team understands the container that they're actually in. They got their guardrails. They know what the protections are. They know what they're actually working within. We're in a period of input. Here's what that means. So I love your point about always making sure you understand your definition. And by input, we mean it does not mean decision, just to be clear. And giving people space to move through what they're thinking about, what they're recognizing, what they're actually living with, and taking that data in because, hello, friends, you are in a relationship with your team, whether you like it. And it's data for the health of your relationship. So for me, I want leaders to really like, in terms of like rethinking this whole idea about being busy, that pause is so important. If you have not left your desk, if you're working from home, or you have not left the factory, you have not left the plant floor, you have not left your office to go for a walk, to take your iPad or your notebook and go sit somewhere else, you better put that on your schedule for this Friday. Pick it up and go sit somewhere else and start to really give your body an opportunity to literally start to reassert what it needs, give your brain an opportunity to slow itself down so that you can start to go, okay, what the heck is really going on right now?
Mm.
Mhm. Because I think a lot of us, Russell, are disconnected from what our body is telling us. And we say we're trusting our gut, but some of us need some leadership probiotic. Gut's not right.
So looking at it from two angles, though, what is the canary in a coal mine? Not only for ourselves, but
Mhm.
to your point, the people we have relationships with. Because as a leader, we have to be paying attention to the, okay, I'm getting into the busyness and I should be pulling back. But we not only have to recognize that for ourselves, we have to recognize it for the team that we're responsible and accountable to. So what is it internally and externally we should be looking for?
So when I work with leaders, typically I start with their calendar, which I know might people might like to roll your eyes. And I just want to tell y'all for the record, most of the things Russell and I talking about, duh, there should be nothing I say that is actually that revolutionary per se, other than the which is the other side of the duh. You didn't action it yet for real. Hello? So I think thing one, when I work with leaders, screen share. Let me see your calendar. When I see an executive and they don't have meetings on their calendar, or they don't have like, oh, so and so stopped by my office, or so and so did a quick huddle, I make them go through the exercise of, if somebody talks to you for longer than 5 minutes, it's a meeting. It's a huddle at 5 to 10 minutes, right? It should say huddle with Russell, right? And what do we talk about? Because you want to start to see where you're spending your actual time. And then you get to decide, I haven't been able to get work blocks done because I'm in meeting 9 hours a day. What does that mean for me to be able to have a clarity of mind to deliver? Clearly, I have to actually start to delegate and delegate differently. What I do then with teams, once I've done that with the leader, is look at how folks are getting work. So I come from a grants background. When I first got into nonprofit work, I was a grant writer for the first couple of years, and I did federal grants, and you had to track your time so that it got aligned to the budget area, right? So I'm comfortable with time tracking. So I believe in doing that with your team a couple times a year because it gives you an opportunity to recalibrate where folks are actually spending their time. And then you as a leader get to take that data and go, do we actually have the right priorities? Are we actually driving to the bottom line? Or are we limping along to the bottom line? Are we burning on our people to get to these outcomes? What can we do differently? Then you can bring your team back into those conversations. So really looking at the tools we already have, starting with yourself, to start to see what is the data telling us about how we need to operate moving forward so that we can do something different. Because the answer typically is in the room. The answer typically is in the room for me. So I think I don't know, that to me is one of the simplest things I do. Can I see your calendar, please? And they're like, my calendar. It's like a sin. Calendar. Yes, but I would like to see it. Oh, you didn't put that you went for a walk? Oh, you haven't eaten in 3 weeks, Anyway.
Well, it's so, I mean, I love the idea of being obvious. I love the idea of just going, well, let's use the tool that we all look at every day. Are you a leader or a cog in your wheel of like, are you following your calendar around or are you leading your calendar? Much different perspective of this.
100%.
So
100%.
what kind of conversations do we need to have? Because
Yeah.
in a diverse workplace, as a Gen Xer, you may be leading boomers, or a millennial leading Gen X's and boomers that have a different perspective of busy equals success.
Correct.
And you're coming in this, doing your self work, understanding that calendar is the canary in a coal mine, as it were. How do you approach a team that might have different, even culturally, have different ideas coming from? So there's Asian countries that have a much different idea of what a 9 to 5 or different hours look like, or how to spend that time, or outside of work where you're building relationships. That's all work. So how do you approach that when their definitions might be different?
So when I go in or I go with my team and we do leadership experiences, for example, we start there. I start at the house. I don't want to talk about work. So for most of my clients, even when we do big, hundreds of people exercises, we get in their people business. Okay. I want to know what birth order you are. I want to know what your family of origin is. I want to know, how did you grow up socioeconomically? Right? Did you talk about money? Did you play sports? Were you the last picked for kickball? Hello? Nerds of the World Unite. Like, who was a dance major and who was in theater? Like, the reason that I ask these questions is because everywhere you go, there you are. And it helps me, and I'm a Clifton Strengths coach, so it helps me to leverage whatever assessment tool, whether it's Clifton Strengths or it's DISC, or it's ILS, whatever it is, to then take the reality of people's lives and create sort of like an interpersonal heat map that now we can start to talk about. Now we start to talk about commonalities and themes. Now we can start to help people understand one another through the lens of. So when I'm a leader and I'm a Gen Xer and I know that I have team members who are like, yeah, that's not in my job description. It makes it easier for me when I come in to go, here's the cheat sheet of how to work with me well. And as a leader, people got to know how to work with you. And then you've got to know how to work with your people. So for the folks who are like, that's not in my job description, on the inside, I might be like, the hell, it isn't your job description. This chat on the 15th and the 30th, that is my internal dialogue. I'm not going to lie to y'all. Externally, they might see it in my face though. So there's somebody who hasn't worked with me yet. Because people who work with me will not say that out loud twice. Externally, I'm like, fair. Right? Also, your job description is actually supposed to be an umbrella of responsibilities, not a ticker tape of tasks. And most people write them as this long ass to-do list. Mm-hmm. It's where we get it twisted. So then I got to bring him back up. Ah, you're right. Let's look at your work plan though. Let's look at what success looks like. Are we on the same page? Let's look at what it's going to take for baseline. That's to say you showed up to get the paycheck that you signed up for. And now, what does it look like to move up? So we get to have different conversations. For my team members, and I actually was a 21-year-old with boomers on my team. Let me just be clear that I had to manage. And so for me, I understood instinctively that there was a little bit of deference that I needed to have in terms of how I worked with them that grew to serve me so well because I understood, oh, these folks are going to be here for their 35 years and they're going to get their pension and they're about to go. And so no one's leaving. So I'm not trying to move up the ladder. I'm trying to learn what I can so I can expand my capacity so I can move on. And I need folks in my corner who are going to champion me to do so. And so the way I ask questions became about that, right? Like that knowledge share, that transfer, that learning from stylistically, that savvy with politics, the being able to understand how to navigate in corporate spaces. So instead of it being like, why is it like that? Mine was like, ooh, I'm very curious. Is my life? So I want managers to, and people managers and leaders more globally to get curious about your team members. Get curious about the makeup of your team. And I think that and I grew up, I came in, I'm sure you did too, into the workplace where you don't talk about religion, your family, or politics. But if we talk about my earlier statement, everywhere you go, there you are. All there in the things we don't say.
We mentioned this earlier about boundaries. And I
Yeah.
can hear people listening to this going, okay, sure, we'll create and affect the organization, the team that we're in. But I live in a culture where you don't get to say no based on X title, based on where you sit in a hierarchical chart. So as a leader, am I empowering my team to go yes and? Or are they able to say no? Like, where is the boundary to boundaries?
I think that, so first of all, to me, boundaries are an invitation to how people get to be in community with you and in relationship with you. Those are things that you decide internally are go, no go. Rules are the things for other people. Right? And then as a leader, you create, and you hear me say the guardrails for your organization, for your team. And if you think about guardrails, friends, for those of y'all who have gone bowling, and you see the little people, when they learn how to bowl, the bowling alley, I did not know this when I was learning to bowl, has a little thing, you press the button, and on the sides come up these two plastic guards that make sure no matter where the ball goes, let me tell you what it does, get down the lane and it hits a ball. Your job as the leader is to ensure you put things in place that no matter where that darn ball goes, it is going to hit those pins. And so if you grew up in a culture like I did of guessers and not askers, and so you grew up in a guessing family where you're expected to know, if you find yourself saying internally, well, they should just know, whoop, pause. Probability is high you grew up in a guessing family, right? Or culture, or both. And that you're dealing with someone who you don't know if they're a guesser or an asker or grew up in that family. So that's your opportunity to pause and ask. Because if you understand how people come into their workspace, that's an opportunity to build that relationship. Then you get to say, oh, this is a yes and, or a no, here's another alternative. So if you want to move to a type of leadership style where your team members get to experience yes and, you have to model what that looks like and you have to explicitly name it. I would like us to try it this way because I've noticed that. Y'all are telling me no by not doing stuff or doing it late or doing it incorrectly or doing it half-assed or whatever the thing is, right? You're telling me yes and by taking forever to finish on the thing I told you to do with another pathway and then I'm so exhausted by y'all, I said, go ahead anyway. So your behavior is already doing the thing. I would just like us to name it up front and codify it so that we can keep it on First Street.
I think we've lost the meaning of words like leader, because the whole point of being a leader is you lead somebody. You don't go, there's the North Star, you go figure your own way there. No, you have to lead them there. Yeah, it's not an interpretive dance. You are the leader for a reason.
It's it's perfect. And 6 and 7 and 8 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And if You don't want to dance to that rhythm, my friends. You don't have to. You could go.
Where does that show up in artifacts that we are so reliant on in organization, like onboarding,
Yes.
performance reviews? How
Yes.
does us getting away from busy look like when we're sticking to that process that every organization seems to go through?
Oh, okay. I'll give you a quick example. So, I just mentioned this whole thing about personality assessment.
Mhm.
So many organizations have some version of something that they try or use, and typically it is nested in like the employee retreat, the annual company summit, whatever. But it's not rolled into anything else. So if you have new team members take an assessment when they start and it doesn't show up in their onboarding, in their work plan, in how they're assessed in their performance evaluation, if it doesn't come in any conversations, was it just a fun exercise that you spent a lot of money on? Cause seems so. So when companies want to hire me to come in to do strengths, I ask, well, what are you going to use it for when I leave? Maybe I shouldn't ask that question because I'm like, you want to pay me, all right, but I just can't live that way. And so companies need to really, leaders specifically, need to be thinking about when I think about organizational health, one of the levers that I need to pull is, are the tools that we are using to assess success actually helping to improve the health and well-being of our employees so that they are performing better and not just performing? I don't want tap dancers. I would like synchronized swimming though, a little bit different. Back to you. I wanted to dance. So if you like an assessment, take the time to make sure that that tool will actually work for the different types of generations that are in your organization, the different types of people. We get our demographics mostly when we join organization. Take a look at that stuff with your people team and then make sure that you work so that those things fit together. And then as the executive leader, talk about why it's important. Talk about how you use it at work. If you really want to be brave, talk about how you use it at home. You will find that adoption will go up because people are curious, nosy, if you will, about what makes others tick. And then work with your people team to tie that into how we change and shift the culture, a set of behaviors
Mm.
in our organization.
But Kishana, we're so productive. We're doing such a great job. Look at our numbers. We are busy. The sales guys are doing great. Like, why should we worry about how the sausage is made? Because the sausage is fantastic at the end of the day. So you've got, I'm sure, people that are equals dollar sign and they feel like productivity is moving the needle. What is the benefit? Of course, I'm, voicing the
Yeah,
critics
yeah.
here. What's the benefit of not being busy? Because we're obviously being pretty productive. So busyness is working for us. Why would we change?
I think it's the difference between getting the big box store brand of batteries and getting the fancy rechargeable. So you might be productive, but to what end? If you are burning out your people to get to the outcome and you have high churn, then actually you are experiencing loss and then you're experiencing that the actual creep, the leakage, if you will, because every time you have a vacancy and have to post, to train, to onboard, to get the person back into cycle. And sales teams are great examples of that,
Mhm.
where there might be one or two high performers, but baby, those teams are turning over. They're turning over. Why? Because there's not a position of care in terms of what do we provide for our sales teams, to using that example, to ensure that in addition to hitting their actual numbers, that they're taking care of themselves while they do it. And
And
so go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, what worries me sometimes is the stories that people tell themselves, i.e., hey, there's huge turnover. Well, you know what? They just weren't a right fit for us. Like that, they aren't our material for our organization. They burnt out because they weren't ready to do what was needed to do X
Yes.
sales, X blah, blah. That toxic behavior is thankfully getting much more of a spotlight, I think, since COVID more than anything. I love
Absolutely.
the shift, but it's still a problem.
Huge. But guess where it comes from? You're gonna laugh at me. I'm gonna say it one more time. It comes from the house. Here's a quick example, y'all. When my daughter, she was about to be 20, Yes. Can you believe it, Russell? I have an almost 20-year-old. Look at this good skin. I don't even have on makeup today. This is a
As a
mess.
50, as a 19-year-old, that's amazing.
Oh my gosh. I'm a lady. Well, let's take a paragraph because people are going to understand this. My child told me the other day, she was like, what are you going to do today, Mom? I was like, oh, I'm going to go into the garden. I think I'm going to repot the plants for fall and clean up the front patio because I like to work in the morning. She says to me, sounds appropriate. I said, what? She, what your age? I said, excuse me? You know what she said to me, friends? Well, Mommy, you're closer to 50 than you are to 40. You understand my life. Okay. So I just had to give y'all that little
That's
aside.
fair, fair. She now no longer lives with you, but yes, it's a lovely story.
She's now officially on her own, pay her own bills. Thanks. You know, but I think that like for me, one of the things that has like really stood out to me is that when she was little, my mom, I said to her, Mom, when we were growing up, because I have 4 siblings, when we were growing up, y'all parented us all the same way. And if somebody ain't all in line and they fell off the truck, that was the person who fell off the truck. Oh, your sibling, they just couldn't do right. Parents did not blame themselves. Okay. So my progressive self said to my mother, well, Mom, now we actually parent to the child. And so each child is different. So you actually have to pay attention to what they need to give them what they need. Right? See, you're not. I know listeners are not. This lady says to me, what new parenting book are you reading? And so I give y'all that example to say, many of us are like, well, it worked for me. And so if you don't fit, it's your fault. It's not an indication that I don't know how to adapt. And what I'm saying is that we need to actually shift away from that, my way or the highway, to if we in fact want to keep making money, keep making more widgets, have bigger services, scale, be the world leader of, be the boutique firm of, whatever your actual like goal is for your company, then you actually have to, have a nuanced way of thinking about longevity because otherwise we're not loyal anymore. And actually, friends, the call's coming from inside the house. It's you. Okay. Just want to say that.
So it's us. We're responsible.
Yep.
So I like wrapping up conversations with sort of that dipping your toe in. Where do you start tomorrow? You're not reading a whole book. You're not taking a whole course or hiring you or anyone else to sort of help with this, but you need to take a first step in the right direction, say tomorrow after listening to this podcast. What would you recommend is that baby step to even acknowledge that busyness is a problem?
So thing one, the way I wrote my book is that you don't actually have to read the whole book. It's written in self-contained chapters, and the chapter titles actually tell you what it is. So you just look at what your challenge is today, and 10 minutes later, you have your first step. I just want y'all to know that's how I wrote it. Okay, that is the neurospiciness of me. So if you want to say, like, what is your one thing? Your one thing is to acknowledge that perhaps there's a quiet voice going, you're tired. You have to be able to name for yourself that something is not quite right. A lot of us have a hard time saying something's wrong. But if I ask you what's not right, you're gonna give me a list of things. So that first step, acknowledging, I think I'm at a point where something needs to shift. Sit with that feeling. Sit with that. Sit with it for a couple days, y'all. Let it come to you for what it is. Then I want you to focus on what I call my 5-star wellness plan. Give it to you in a minute. Your physical health and well-being, your emotional wellness and well-being, your spiritual wellness and well-being, if that's your jam, your financial wellness and well-being, and your community wellness and well-being, who you surround yourself with. So that's your crew at work, that's your crew at home, that's your crew in your community, right? Of those 5 things, think of those as dominoes. Which of the 5, if you knocked that over, would knock over the rest of them? For me, in this season of my life, Russell, it's my financial wellness and well-being. That is the thing that I've had to knock that over and focus in because it affects my mental health. It affects my spiritual life. It affects my physical health, and it is affecting my community because I ain't going outside. You see what I'm saying? So if you as a leader are able to go, hold on, let me just do a gut check. Which of the 5 do I need to focus on so that the other dominoes will start to fall? I promise y'all, if you're able to do that and identify that one thing and commit to yourself that is a responsibility you have as a leader to make sure you are well in that one area, you will start to see your leadership at work shift almost overnight. Almost overnight. That's what I
That is Kishshana Palmer. She's a keynote speaker, author, executive coach, and organizational change expert, founder of Management. And there's a book. You check it out, please. We're all busy. We need to stop this nonsense. Busy is a 4-letter word, a guide to achieving more by doing less. Thank you so much for being here, Kishshana.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.